Assalamualaikum students, this is me Sarah Zana, and from the orientation I'm sure that you have a clear idea about your course study, about your course outline, and this is my first lecture, and I'm starting this course with very easy, very interesting, very simple novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And I'm not going to discuss the events of the novel and the characters of the novel because we are studying this novel under the term post-colonial study. So the topic of my lecture is Things Fall Apart as Post-Colonial Novel. And the main aspects of this lecture, the main directions, the main points of this lecture, that it is based on the introduction of the novelist Chinua Achebe, his personal life, his professional life, his major works, and even the criticism on his works, and his awards, his honors, and the most important, his contribution in literary world, his style of writing. Fine. And the second main aspect of my lecture is the introduction of novel, obviously. Um, and in that introduction, I'll discuss the story outline and the title, the themes, the epigraph of novel, and as well as the most important thing in my lecture is that I'll discuss the post-colonial aspects of novel. For example, like the political eye on Things Fall Apart, and we will focus on the political suppression and oppression of Africans, and I'll discuss Things Fall Apart as a social document, a classic work of fiction, and um, all the post-colonial terms like patriarchy, identity crisis, and hybridity, unhomeliness, and agency, and and many other like cultural issues. The basic agenda, the basic you can say the basic main issue of Things Fall Apart is that their cultural crisis. So we will discuss all about Things Fall Apart under the term post-colonial study. Students, here I have included a review of The Guardian about the novel Things Fall Apart because it is very important to know the importance of the significance of novel under the term post-colonialism. Here, The Guardian says that Things Fall Apart was one of the first African novels to gain worldwide recognition. Half a century on, it remains one of the great novels about the colonial era. So, Things Fall Apart reveals you the issues of power, the issues of economic, the issue of culture. So, this novel attempts to focus on the oppression of those who were ruled under colonization. So, here I think it's important to discuss all the aspects, all the post colonial aspects that revealed through Things Fall Apart. And it is not only my duty, my responsibility to dictate you, but this lecture gives you the direction that how to read this novel under the term post-colonialism, and uh, you will discuss the factors like political oppression, economic, social, uh, cultural oppression, even psychological oppression, identity crisis, cultural crisis. So there are a lot of aspect, post-colonial aspect that you can discuss through things fall apart under post-colonialism. So students, let's start with the introduction of author Chinua Achebe. He was born in southeastern Nigeria in Igbo village, and he was the fifth of six children. During his early life, Nigeria was still British colony. His father was missionary instructor in catechism, where Achebe started his education at Church Missionary Society's school. His nature was different because of his interest in indigenous Nigerian culture. Even he also rejected his Christian name and took his indigenous African name. And as I told you that his father was missionary instructor in catechism, he had a library that was full of books in English, and his mother instilled him a love for traditional storytelling. So that is why Achebe had a keen interest in literature. So students, Achebe studied history and theology, and after graduation, he joined Nigerian Broadcasting Service, where he wrote scripts and started his novel Things Fall Apart. In 1956, he was selected to go to London for training at BBC and continued his work on Things Fall Apart. And in 1958, it was published 2 years before Nigerian independence. And because of his activist thoughts, he was considered one of the founders of Nigerian literary movement of 1950s. He became involved in politics and actively crusaded for help for sufferers for his country. So class, Achebe started learning English when he was at 8. As I told you in slide number 2, Achebe's father's library was full of books in English. Achebe learns to speak English not generally but develop mastery in it. So, Achebe's achievement is rooted in a mastery of form and language. And that is the fact that Achebe's governing ambition as a writer is deeply moral. Whenever Achebe is asked about his purpose in writing, he begins with a deep sense of the responsibility of the writer to his community. As he said, once you realize how the world is organized, you must then, as a writer, ask, what am I doing writing stories in this kind of situation? Who is going to read them? And use is all going to be. Achebe's answer to the question that has always been asked, that his writing should serve the purpose of helping his fellow Igbos, his fellow Nigerians, and his fellow Africans to come to terms with their history and to recognize both what was strong and what was weak in African past. So, class, in this regard, Achebe is examining a crucial moment in modern human history, a moment whose importance is particularly compelling for readers in the post colonial worlds of Africa and Asia. Here, I remind you the words of T.S. Eliot. He said, although it is only too easy for a writer to be local without being universal, I doubt whether a poet or novelist can be universal without being local too. So, you see that how Achebe's work reflects his preoccupation with the sociological and humanistic aspect of his nation, both in past and the present times. So, students, it is justified to call Chinua Achebe the father of the African novel in English. Achebe occupies significant place among non-native writers of English. He is not only a writer, but critic and a political activist too. Achebe is a creative author, and his creativity reflects in his use of African English, drawing on proverbs, tales, and idioms of traditional Igbo culture. Achebe is the most influential writer to have come out of the Africa since the late 1950s because um, because he has done much to promote writing in English by editing the African Writer series that gives voice to many diverse voices in Africa. So, Achebe believes that politics and writing share a symbolic relationship, and the writer should be at the head of the big social and political issues of contemporary Africa. Many writers from the former European dominates colonies shares his view that the writer's role in these new emergent nations should be linked to the social and political welfare of any country. As he claims, I am a protest writer, and that any good story, any good novel should have a message. So after publication of Things Fall Apart in 1960s, HB has started teaching, lecturing, then writing fiction. Although he has published books for the young and has concentrated exclusively on educating them. So class, here are some major works and honors of Chinua Achebe. Chinua Achebe's first novel, Things Fall Apart, was published in 1958. It has been translated into 40 languages. Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, and The Arrow of God form his African trilogy. This established his reputation as a writer and has been translated into many languages. Its themes are the moral and the practical dilemmas facing people absorbing European culture while retaining the traditions of African culture. While his experience of Nigerian civil war are given expression in the essay Be Aware, Soul Brothers, that was written in 1971. Here in this slide again I'm going to discuss some major work and major contribution in literary work with his honors. So Chinua Achebe in 1987 wrote Anthers of the Savannah that was shortlisted for Booker Prize, and it was Achebe's fifth novel that was written more than 20 years after his previous work, A Man of the People. And this work, Anthers of Savannah, has revived his reputation in Britain as well. So after that, he wrote a tribute to James Baldwin that was published in 1989, and in 1972 he got Commonwealth Poetry Prize. And the next point that is very interesting for me, that Chinua Achebe has refused to get national honor. He has declined the Nigerian government's attempt to name him a commander of the Federal Republic. So he not only once but twice he has rejected to take this honor, the Order of Federal Republic. Here I want to discuss post-colonial literature before the discussion on Things Fall Apart as post-colonial novel. Student, first of all, we need to understand the term post-colonialism. Post-colonialism is a term that has been used in literary criticism since 1980s. It is a rough estimate that this term has been used in literary criticism since 1980s, and a possible working definition of post-colonialism is that it involves a studied engagement with the experience of colonialism and its past and present effect, both at the local level and of ex-colonial societies and at the general global level, a level of more developed thought to be after effects of empire. Are you getting my point? I repeat my first point, that post-colonialism is a term that we need to understand it, that it has been used in literary criticism from 1980s till present, fine, and a possible working of definition of post-colonialism is that it involves a studied engagement with the experience of colonialism and its past and present effects. The effects that are both at local level and general level. At local level of ex-colonial societies and at the more general level, that is the global development after the effect of empire. Now the second point, that it involves, like post-colonial literature involves the discussion of experiences such as slavery, migration, suppression, resistance, difference, race, and gender. And there are many other terms that are used as post-colonial terms in post-colonial literature that are more refined, that we will discuss in next slide, the terms that have been used by Homi K. Bhabha, like unhomeliness, agency, hybridity, and many more. So here I'm talking about the general clarity of post-colonial literature. This term is as much about the conditions under imperialism and colonialism proper as about the conditions coming after historical and of colonialism. So, post-colonial literature represent the miseries and the sufferings that comes from the various source and inspirations. Here are some work of famous authors that reflects the idea of post-colonial literature, and as well as they discuss the context of colonialism in in that works. Um, the first thing which I want to discuss about post-colonial style is that you will observe the the difference of thoughts, the difference in the mentality of white people and black people. The white people always consider black people as savages, as brutes, as mysterious, as black, like the ignorant person. The black is for them a sign of ignorance. So here I have given you some novels, the name of some novels, which are the most important and main novels of post-colonial literature. So I think through this slide you have a clear idea about post-colonial literature, and you are now clear about the context, about the base of post-colonial literature. So students, in this slide we will discuss Things Fall Apart as post-colonial novel. As I told you in my first lecture, that post-colonial is an interesting trend of literature that is recently emerged. Now it has become not only a trend but considered a literary style. So it is defined as an academic study of colonialism and imperialism, focusing on the minds of people and exploitation of their land. So the writer who has that experience, he mainly speak of trauma. Trauma means deeply distressing and disturbing experience. So he mainly speak of trauma, humiliation, and slave mentality that is induced in colonized psyche. And student, if we see the context, then we'll come to know that Africa was considered as a dark continent by the West. And, and during that time, most of the Europeans had bad views about Africa. They considered Africa as dark and dangerous country, full of cannibals. And the reason is about their dark jungles, their dark color of their dark skin, and their barbaric customs, and above all, the lack of Christianity. So the explorer brought back strange stories about their customs and tradition. But here, Achebe reflects the mentality of both exploiter and exploited, and he has presented both sides of picture. So here it is justified to say that Achebe is pioneer who presented reality to see actual incidents with open eyes without lens of prejudice. So as we have discussed that Things Fall Apart reveals colonialism as traumatic experience that is common to all former colonial territories. So in Africa, that traumatic experience deals with the actual moment of colonization, with arrival of missionaries with their agendas of civilization, progress, and technological operators. So it reveals the story of colonialism of a village, Umofia, dealing with the tragedy of protagonist Akonko. So students, in Things Fall Apart, the tradition of Igbo culture is revealed, is reflected. Here, HB presents main idea about life and culture that it should not be stagnant. Achebe's novel reveals the rigidity of Okonko, that obsession with cultural traditions could be dangerous. So, in truth, Things Fall Apart educate not only the African readers but also the readers of all the world. This novel is also a reaction against all those texts who dehumanize Africans. Achebe's poetics and philosophy has courage to see other side of picture. And students, here I'll assign you a work that is a project or an assignment that is based on Homi K. Bhabha's notion of post-colonialism. In his book, The Location of Culture, he has discussed post-colonialism and its different theories or aspects like unhomeliness, hybridity, mimicry, binary. So you have to apply all these aspects, post-colonial aspects, on this novel. This is your assignment. Achebe's Things Fall Apart passes through the phases. The first phase is pre-colonial phase, the second one is colonial phase, and the third one is post-colonial phase. And uh, here we will focus on the impact of colonialism on the society of Things Fall Apart, that is Igbo society. So, in first phase, the pre-colonial phase, we will see uh, Igbo society a healthy and prosperous society with full of culture, with full of norms, with full of traditions. While in colonial phase, uh, the colonial phase appears with the arrival of colonizers, and in third phase, post-colonial phase, that began with the suicide of Conco and breakdown of indigenous belief and governance system. So let's see the detail. In pre-colonial phase, a Conco, the protagonist, represent the first phase. He represents the unity of Igbo society, their culture, norms, traditions, and supremacy of the males. This line is very important. It represents the patriarchal society, the key term of post-colonialism. So, Akebe's novel treats the rise and fall of an Igbo man, a Konko, who is not an individual but a type character whose downfall and disintegration represent the disintegration of Igbo culture and society. While in colonial phase, the story of Things Fall Apart that has been taken the event of British colonization over Nigeria. When missionaries arrive as the part of takeover and Britain imposes a legal system to assist them in converting villagers into Christianity. And that a culture, that Igbo society is the last group to be converted into Christians. And Achebe here highlights the point of attack that leads towards the inevitable progress of colonialism. So, in colonial phase, you will come to know uh, the downfall of Igbo society and the weaknesses of Igbo society, the weaknesses of a Konko as well, and all the aspect that leads Igbo society towards colonization. And the third and last phase of Things Fall Apart is post-colonialism. Throughout the rapid changes that occur in the last part of the novel, a Konko is grieved but powerless. He is a symbol of resistance, but the forces of change are more powerful than the native resistance. Being powerless, a Konko commits suicide. who is not only the main character in the novel but is also a symbol of the old order. He symbolizes traditional values as hunting, farming, respect, and worship of ancestors and gods. A Conco will not submit to the brutalization by the colonizer and the destruction of old values. His death shows that things have indeed fallen apart when the might of the white man triumphed. His act of hanging himself is the final one of despair. The old society dies with a Congo, but it is not a natural death. It kills itself as a Congo does. So the difference, however, is that a Congo suicide is a collective suicide of the people of Umofia, the collective suicide of Igbo society when they refuse to fight both the new religion and the colonial administration acting together have subdued the Igbo people. The society surrenders itself through submission to the white man, whereas a Congo kills himself because he sees his submission as a sign of moral collapse. And because he himself will not submit, he cannot live any longer. So, this is all about Things Fall Apart, the story outline that I have divided into three phases, and I'm sure that will help you out to understand uh, all these terms, all the three terms related to colonialism and post colonialism. Students, Things Fall Apart is basically considered as a reaction against all those texts who dehumanize Africans. Achebe's philosophy is based on the courage to see other side of the picture. For example, according to Achebe, Conrad is a modern Shakespeare who always supported the upper class. Here, um, he is meant to discuss Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. He says that Heart of Darkness deals with African, and it deals uh, it reflects that Africans are savages, they are slaves, they are meant to be slaves, they are brutes, and Achebe, who belongs to Africa, he gives respect to Africans. He gives respect to Igbo culture, the African culture, while Conrad dehumanizes and depersonalizes blacks by his chauvinism. And if you see the text of white people or text of Britishers like Joyce Carey, who wrote The African's Witch and Mr. Johnson. So here you see that the African witch reflects a dehumanized and depersonalized idea. And Mr. Johnson, Mr. shows respect. So title is binary and title is ironic. So we see that Things Fall Apart is a reaction of all these type of text who is based on chauvinism, who is based on the prejudice, which is based on the the sense of priority of civilization, as white people consider them the most civilized nation. So here the white man's burden by Kipling also suggests that it is the duty of the civilized nation, that is the Britishers, that is the white people, it is their duty to train the blacks. It is their duty to give them civilization, to give them the light of knowledge, So, post-colonial literature uh, is based on the different thoughts, like the white people have different thought and the black people, the colonizer, have different thought. Students, in this slide we will discuss some major themes of this novel, Things Fall Apart, and the first theme is colonialism. As we all know that colonialism is the full or partial control over another land or another country. So, through Things Fall Apart, we will witness Igbo society, uh, the colonialism of Igbo society, and his and its traumatic experience. And also, we will come to know that how traditional values are put in conflict with an alien and more powerful culture that brings destruction of Igbo culture and its norms and values. And second theme is fallibility of a man. Fallibility means the tendency to make mistakes. Here I'll quote the protagonist, Akonko, and I'll discuss the character of Akonko under this theme. Uh, like we all are human, not angels. So there's a 90% tendency to make mistakes being a human. It is very famous quote, to err is human. So under this theme, we will discuss the tragic and the moving story of protagonist Akonko. The next theme, social disintegration, deals with the uh, disconnection of social norms and values and social institutions. Here we can say that the Igbo society has very weak social structure, and that society is losing its self-determination that is based on social institutions, and it also deals with the political determination. So the next theme is fate and free will. In Things Fall Apart, Achebe discusses that when a man says yes, his chi is the personal god, and his chi also says yes. This belief that he controls his own destiny, but with the passage of time, all events occur to undermine this belief. Achebe proves that the catastrophe comes through a complex mix of external forces and character's choice. So, this is also a very important theme in this novel. And next, the very important theme, that is superstitious beliefs. Achebe does not gloss over the cruelty and superstition that prevailed in Igbo culture. In fact, he shows that it was partially of the elders' rigid adherence to traditions that seemed inhuman and outdated that paved the way for the disintegration of tribes and their ultimate fate. And the next theme is masculinity and femininity. Masculinity is one of Okonkwo's obsession. So for him, masculinity is power, authority, and supremacy. So femininity is for him totally opposite of masculinity, and it also reveals the injustice in their social and political tradition. In this slide, we will discuss the epigraph of the novel Things Fall Apart. That epigraph is taken from Yeats's poem The Second Coming, and this poem aptly refers the theme or the idea of the novel. The first line, turning and turning in the widening gyre. Here, the widening gyre reflects to Yeats' belief that the world was created by a series of interlocking circles spinning into each other and widening around each other to catalyze existence. Um, so for me, the first line, like turning and turning in the widening gyre, also refers to something that is turning, and there is a change that is occurring in the universe. And this first line also serves to create mystery, obscure, or the complexity that is going to happen. In the second line, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. So, in the result of that turning and turning in the widening gyre, that in that mystery, in that complexity, the falcon, who could be the humanity, and the falconer could be the god. So, in that mystery, in that complexity, that falcon is separated from his falconer. And this line also indicates the breaking of connection, where the system is collapsed. And third line is the connection of first two lines, that the turning of that widening gyre, and at the result of that the falcon is unable to listen its falconer, because things fall apart, that the things are falling apart and center cannot hold, means there is a breaking of unity. The things are dangerously or possibly liberating themselves from the center, and at that result there is an anarchy that is loose upon the world. So, in the next lines, the blood dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is droned, means at the result of that anarchy or violence that is destroying the innocence of people, and people who believe in goodness are being silenced, while the loudest speakers are the villains or the chaos bringers. These lines indicate the idea of overwhelming violence and uncontrollable chaos. So, in the novel, the things fall apart, the center cannot hold. The center is ego culture that becomes weak, and all the social institutions are unable to hold that center. And that anarchy is in the form of colonialism. And that colonialism, that anarchy brings degradation and downgradation. So, the fall of Africa is becomes the insult, the degradation of Africa, or the downgradation of Africa. And it's because of their culture. They downgraded their culture because when fresh air would not be inhaled and impure air would not be exhaled, one's body will work perfectly. So here Achebe is giving us a moral, a lesson, or a message that life is a form of changing energies. It is the way to live rightly. In this slide, we will discuss the epigraph of this novel, Things Fall Apart. Epigraph of this novel is taken from Yeats's poem, The Second Coming, that was written in 1919 after World War One and in the beginning of Irish War of Independence. And this poem is written by W.B. Yeats, who was patriotic Irish poet. In this slide, I'll discuss the title of Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart is a title that is very important, very apt and authentic. And Chinua Achebe chose this title for his book from the poem by William Butler Yeats, The Second Coming. In this poem, the Christian era falls and gives way to the modern era, an event which in Yeats' mind occurred as a result of World War One. The poem states that as an anarchy is imposed on the world in the wake of the fall of religion, things fall apart. And this idea is especially very important, very apt to show the Igbo culture, how it began to fracture. It seems as if the characters are living near end times, at least for their culture. And with the arrival of the Christian missionaries, something of the reverse from the intent of the poem, the culture begins to fragment and crumble. Achebe's idea is that the upheaval that breaks down religion and culture will send society into stagnation and destruction as occurred in Igbo society. So here, things fall apart reflects the breakup of older and settled older, and it also reflects the rigid social structure and social institutions. The political instability is also there, and inflexible demarcation between men and women. And the most important that is the lack of unity in Umofia in the Igbo society, and their religion that is also very weak, their beliefs are weak, and they believe in superstition that is the weakest point of their religion. So these are some of the factors which are representing that how things are falling apart in the novel. Political eye on things fall apart is very important, and when we are discussing things fall apart as a post-colonial novel, as we have discussed that things fall apart reveal the three phases of colonization: pre-colonization, colonization, and then post-colonization. And this novel set in post-colonial Africa, it reveals third world politics as backdrop. So this novel, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, is such an economical and lucid depiction of tribal society cracking under the weight of colonialism that it has become required reading in many Americans' high school, in many Western countries. So this is also a political agenda to justify themselves that they make this novel, Things Fall Apart, a required reading in their curriculum. So here, if we discuss things fall apart politically, then we can see the Achebe's the political struggle between the city and the tribal villages and the after effects of the great African drought with equal compassion. All the things happened and things fall apart are based on the political struggle, the political agenda that affect that tribal society socially, economically, religiously, educationally, their culturally, and many other aspects. So, Achebe's interest in showing Igbo society in the period of transition when traditional values are put in conflict with an alien and more powerful culture. Here, I want to discuss Achebe's some lines that he says that I did not see myself as an African in those books. I took sides with the white men against the savages. In other words, I went through my first level of schooling thinking I was of the party of the white man in his hair, raising adventures and narrow escapes. The white man was good and reasonable and smart and courageous. The savages arrayed against him were sinister and stupid, never anything higher than cunning. I hated their guts. So these lines reveals that uh, these lines reveal the politics of Chinua Achebe himself, that he's standing with the white man, he's exposing the weaknesses of savages, of Africans, and then after he justifies himself being African through the character of a Ponko. And in the end, he says that, but a time came when I reached the appropriate age and realized that these writers had pulled a fast one on me. I was not on Marlowe's boat, steaming up the Congo in heart of darkness. Rather, I was one of those unattractive beings jumping up and down on the riverbank, making horrid faces. It shows that uh, students, what is politics? Like politics is a thing that is amalgamation of you can say um, the positivity and but not negativity, but the mixture of that. Like you have, if you do, if you are um, a person uh, who is not supporting his own agenda, but by the end you are supporting it, and this is politics. And we will discuss this slide in our class as well. If you have any problem, you can uh, text me. You can discuss it with me in our WhatsApp group. So this is quite interesting. Like Achebe is standing with white people, but he is exposing the weaknesses of black people. But after all, he is African and he justifies own uh, his own culture, his own person. That is what I want to say. I want to focus on this aspect. Things Fall Apart, a social document, a classic work of fiction, a social life, a domestic life, a family life. So, as you know that Africans are full of life. Their culture, their norms, their tradition, their religion, everything is very rich, very productive, and very, you can say that very deep. So they have their own reasons, they have their own justification of their social life. So, Things Fall Apart is considered a valuable social document, a realistic picture of traditional Africa, as well as its demise with the one set of colonialism and an attempt to vindicate the ways of tribal life in Nigeria. So here, Things Fall Apart is an attempt to recreate the simplicity of traditional life, the simplicity that leads to devastating effects of colonialism. So, as we have discussed in previous slide, that Achebe has exposed um, their own weakness and while maintaining their own self-respect. Students, there are so many terms uh, that is related with post-colonial literature, that post-colonial theory, but I have chosen here the term patriarchy that leads to the fall of Congo. And this is your task, this is your assignment question, and I have discussed some of the hints here, like the Igbo society, the Umofia is basically the anti-feminist society, and Aponko, including all the males, have no value of women. The value of woman is gone. So man is considered a man, and he can control his wife. He can beat his wife. He can hold all the authority in his hand. So here, uh, as it is said that when a brick falls, next is ready to fall. So like the things are falling apart in Eumorphia, and I consider the first injustice in this novel is under the patriarchal society. So this is my concept, and I have given you a question, a statement that patriarchy leads to fall of a conco, and mm, you have to write um, 200 to 300 words, not more than that, on that topic. So, this is all about Things Fall Apart. Here, I have given you the idea, I have given you a base, a direction, that how we can analyze Things Fall Apart as post-colonial novel. This is not enough. This is not all about the Things Fall Apart as post-colonial novel. So you can explore your own ways. You can find, you can create or recreate your own ideas about that topic. And if you feel any discussion, any doubt in my lecture, then you're always welcome to contact me in my WhatsApp group.